Summer Challenge. Sheesh.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mark Summer Challenge. Today is July 24th, and we are in Mark chapter 11, verse 27 to Mark chapter 12, verse 12. And the title of this devotional is By What Authority? By what authority? So, it's Wednesday of Passion Week, and the religious leaders are outraged over what Jesus has just done by cleansing the temple on Tuesday. Remember, he clears the temple because he will not have his Father's house become a place of business and be abused and mistreated by these religious leaders. So the anger towards Jesus is only going to continue to increase, leading up to his eventual execution on the cross. Now, there's going to be two questions basically asked in our passage today. Okay, two questions. First is going to be, by what authority is Jesus doing these things? Does Jesus actually have the authority to speak out against these religious leaders and to make the claims that he's making, that he's basically equating himself to God? Not basically, he is equating himself to God. And so the religious leaders are going to test him and put this to the test. By what authority are you making these claims, and are you speaking out against us? The second question is, was Jesus' death planned, or was it unexpected? Did it come by surprise to Jesus? And both of these have really obvious answers, but those are the two questions that are basically posed in this passage that we read, okay? So first, number one, we're going to see the authority of Jesus in chapter 11, verses 27 through 33. So it's Wednesday morning, and the chief priests and the scribes and the elders have all gathered to come against Jesus and to test him and to trap him into saying something blasphemous that would allow them to discredit himself and to allow them to execute him, which they wanted to do. But they're in a tough situation because they want to execute Jesus, but in order to do so, they need to have him say something blasphemous, something in front of all these people that would give them the credit and basically the ability to go ahead with their execution. Because if not, then they will find themselves in a really tricky spot, because there's actually a ton of people who like Jesus and who are following him because they love his teaching. And so they need a good reason to execute Jesus. And so their plan now is to test him, keep throwing things at him, trying to trap him into saying something blasphemous so that they can murder him. So they ask Jesus first, by what authority are you doing these things, or who gave you this authority? But friends, remember that God is the true judge. He is not the one that is put on trial. It is us who is put on trial, and he is the judge. And Jesus quickly shows the religious leaders this truth. He puts them in their right place. Jesus says, no. You answer me. I will question you and you answer me. He says, was the baptism of John from heaven or from men? Was the baptism of John the Baptist from heaven or from men? And this puts them in a really difficult situation. The ones who are trying to trap Jesus are themselves put in a trap by the ultimate judge, Jesus. Because if they answer, well, the baptism from John is from heaven, then they affirm that John the Baptist was a real prophet. But they actually don't believe this. They believe John the Baptist was not a real prophet. They would actually want to deny John the Baptist. So if they say from heaven, they would affirm he was a real prophet, and they don't want to say that. But if they say from men, then they deny that John the Baptist was a real prophet. And this would actually make many people angry and upset towards them, because the popular opinion was that John the Baptist was a real prophet. And so if they were to say that he wasn't a real prophet, then people would try to stone them and kill them. So they're in a trap themselves. They can't say he's from heaven because they don't want to say John the Baptist is a real prophet. And they can't say he's from men because they don't want to anger the crowds and have them stone them to death, right? So they're in a trap themselves. The one trying to trap have just been trapped. Jesus absolutely wrecks these guys, and it's awesome. And so what we learn from this passage is that Jesus is the one with full authority, right? Jesus has the authority. In Matthew 28, verse 18, he declared, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. John 3:35, the Father loves the Son and has given all things into his hand. And I want to ask you, do you live as though you submit to Christ's authority? Does your life show a submission to Jesus's authority in your life? Do you seek to glorify him in all that you do? Do you obey the authorities that he has put over you? Your parents, your teachers, your church leaders? Jesus has full authority, and so our lives should reflect that. We should live in submission to Jesus's authority, never putting him to the test, never questioning him like these religious leaders are and trying to trap him, but submitting to his authority. So that was number one, the authority of Jesus. Now, number two, the omniscience and sovereignty of Jesus. And this is in chapter 12, verses 1 through 12. In our last point, we answered the question, does Jesus have full authority? And the answer was obvious. Of course he does. In this passage, we're going to answer the question, was Jesus' death planned, or did it come by surprise, and was it unexpected by Jesus? And the obvious answer is, it was planned, right? Why? Because Jesus knows everything. He is omniscient because he planned everything. He is sovereign, and he certainly has planned his own death. He knows about his own coming death. He's been saying it this whole time, even to his disciples. In our memory verse, Mark 10:45, for the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. And then in John 12, verse 27, he says, now my soul has become troubled. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. But for this purpose I came to this hour. So Jesus absolutely knows what is about to happen. He is omniscient. He is sovereign. He has planned it all out. And so Jesus gives these religious leaders a parable. And he actually gives them three parables, but Mark only records one of them, and that's this one. He tells them a parable, a story of a man who owns a vineyard and rented it out to vine growers, right? And the deal was most likely that the vine growers would be able to use this guy's land, plant and harvest all these crops and sell them for their own business and their own profit, but that they would have to give a share of their produce back to the vineyard owner, right? That's how they would pay him. That was probably the deal, and that was probably a contract that they wrote up. And so the vineyard owner would get a share of the produce, right? That makes sense. That's their payment. So the parable goes that the vineyard owner sends some of his slaves to collect his share of the harvest. But what happens? The vineyard growers, they actually beat up and kill most of the slaves that the vineyard owner sends. And so each time the vineyard owner has mercy on them and gives them another chance and sends another and another slave, and each time the vine growers beat and kill the slaves that the owner sends. Awful. And everybody around them, everybody around Jesus understands this parable and sees how awful this is. And then the parable goes, the vineyard owner gives them one more try, one last effort, one last display of mercy. And he sends his only son to go and collect the produce that he deserves. And what do? It doesn't matter that he's the owner's son. They beat him and they kill him too, and they throw his body on the road. Terrible, right? And what this parable is showing is it's revealing to the religious leaders and to everybody who's listening that Jesus knows exactly what's going on. The vineyard owner is God. The vineyard growers are the religious leaders. And the slaves that the owner is sending are all of the prophets that God has sent to preach his message, from Moses to John the Baptist, that each time they have rejected and killed, the religious leaders have rejected and killed these prophets, just like they have with John the Baptist. And so this is a foreshadow of what's to come, because what also is about to come, that they are going to also, just like they have the prophets, they're going to also reject and kill the Son of God, right? So this is a parable showing and revealing to the religious leaders that Jesus knows exactly what is going on, that they are going to beat him, make him suffer, and they're going to hang him on the cross, and he's going to die there. But Jesus knows this. It is all planned, and this is what must happen in order for our sins to be forgiven. There must be the perfect substitute, Jesus Christ, who will pay for our sins and thus forgive us of our sins. And so that is the parable he gives. He concludes this section by identifying himself as the chief cornerstone. The cornerstone is the most foundational and important part of a stone building. And so Jesus is the foundation and cornerstone. So what is the response from the religious leaders to all of this? Of course, they want to seize him and they want to kill him immediately. But again, there's a bunch of people looking and surrounding them. And many of these people, like Jesus, they follow him, they love his teaching, and they have not yet successfully trapped Jesus into saying something blasphemous, because they can't. And so they can't just go ahead and execute him like they want to, or else the people will become angry and actually rebel against them. So their attempt has failed. They're trying to trap Jesus, but Jesus wrecks them, obviously. And Jesus has full authority. He is completely omniscient, and he is completely sovereign. Awesome passage, right? Awesome. So I've got 3 questions for you. Number 1, why were the religious leaders trying to trap Jesus? So just so you understand, why were they trying to trap Jesus? Number 2, in what practical ways can you submit to God's authority in your life? What are some of the ways that you show submission to God's authority? We kind of talked about that. I'll help you. Submitting to your parents and your teachers and your church leaders, and seeking to glorify him in all that you do, aligning your will with his, always submitting yourself to his authority. So give me some practical ways that you can start, maybe even this week in your life, to submit your life to his authority. How can you do that? Number 3, what attributes of God did you learn from this passage? It is always so good to reflect on the attributes of God and reflect on who God is. And this passage brought about some really awesome and sweet attributes that we must always remember, okay? So that's our devotional for today. Hope you have a good day. See you tomorrow. Bye.